Hi everyone, I'm Tom, and today we're going to talk about some more solo games. Every month, my patrons vote for a top 10 topic, and one of the ones that they've come to is the return of the best solo games. So is this 11 to 20? I don't really know. This is 10 more amazing solo games, which, the first part, a lot of them revolved around a few years ago when I was really playing solo games a lot. Feast for Odin and The Gallerist that year. 2016, was it? But yeah, recently, I've maybe because of the lockdown and all of the mentions and of solo and stuff, I have gone back to it more and more and bought some games specifically because they were in solo. And in the case of my first top 10, Mage Knight was on it, even though I didn't have it. And I went back and got Mage Knight and replayed it again. And yeah, I really, really loved that and missed it. So anyway, yeah, let's get to some solo games. So one of the things as well that kind of holds up all of these top tens in this kind of never-ending cycle is like, well, I want to play this game first to see if this should be on it, and that's really held up, the top 10 of 2019 for a start. But some that I really wanted to get to were Edge of Darkness has got a solo mode that I'm really intrigued about, and Wingspan. I've never played the solo for that, and I've got the European expansion, which I've heard is great for the solo as well. So this is, maybe there's room for a part 3 one day, and I definitely want to do playthroughs for those when I get around to them. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a delay on that. See the beginning of August video to see why. But yeah, let's talk about 10 solo games that I love. Again, more of them. So number 10 is Nations, which is a great big civilization building game, although more along the lines, rather than, a big 4X dudes on a map or anything like that kind of game, it's more along the lines and is originally based on Through the Ages. Where you're going to have loads and loads of cards that represent all of these different aspects of your civilization, and you'll be bringing them into your player board and going in all sorts of different directions, whether you want to generate a load of resources or income or military or stability. So it's that kind of formula, and I did a playthrough for this quite early on in the channel, I think before I did first impressions and things, so here you go now. I really, really love Nations, although I think it's in my, is it in my top 10? It's definitely in the, high up in the top 50 if it's not. But yeah, it works fantastically well. The kind of edge over Through the Ages, because as I mentioned, they are similar systems. I do much prefer the way Nations does a lot of things. I prefer the kind of amount that's in Nations as well, although that can lead to some games where we just happen to draw loads of military. So this is a really military based game. There is a lot of, good as it is, and as much as I enjoy playing Through the Ages on the app. There's a lot of kind of negative interaction, meanness, people lose things baked into the event cards that come out. And although there's military in Nations, you aren't really affecting other players that much. But anyway, this is supposed to be about solo, isn't it? So the solo mode kind of goes against kind of what I thought I wanted from solo games in this, leaning more towards this Ultima Factory, David Turczi kind of, not necessarily an intelligent enemy player, but one that kind of gives off the feeling of playing against someone. Not necessarily that you can predict what they're going to do and stuff, but the actions that they take have got some kind of reasoning behind them, something to play against. And Nations solo mode definitely isn't that. It's rolling dice and deciding cards that they are going to take away from you, and having certain set values that whether to beat or not. That's going to guide you a bit. It's definitely makes you focus a bit more on military as well, whereas that's not always the case in the multiplayer game. And so, yeah, I think it's just the fact of it's just another facet to Nations, although it is one that Rach really loves Nations as well. So it's not like there's a shortage of playing it two-player, although through filming videos and stuff there is kind of a shortage of it. But yeah, I think it's just kind of the access to playing it more. And yeah, it is more of that standard solo mode of you're kind of just playing the game and trying to get a score at the end. But I do feel like playing it as even though you are just randomly taking cards away, it does kind of feel like a player just doing it, for their own ends, not necessarily doing it to spite you. But you really, really need this card to get you the stability that you need. You aren't militarily inclined in this round, and you really, really need some stability so you don't lose a load of resources, and then the dummy player snatches that card away, and now you can't do anything about it. Yeah, it just works fantastically well, and it helps that I really, really, really love Nations. Now, looking back, a lot of this list has kind of lent towards the longer Euro games again, rather than probably could do with one that's just about smaller solo games, because there's plenty of fantastic ones. But number 9 is Assembly, which I did a playthrough for. I did an overview for the expansion when that came out. Assembly is a game about trying to escape a spaceship, essentially. We are trying to reconfigure this computer so we can escape disaster in this spaceship. And so there's kind of a clock of cards, and we will get these module discs on the cards that don't match up with them. And through playing our cards, from being able to swap discs around to rotate certain discs, we are trying to get them in matching positions. And it's a game like a lot of great co-op games, because you can play Assembly multiplayer as well. Like a lot of great games, it's got loads of different aspects that you can add to it to add complexity and difficulty to it. So it's got an expansion, but it's also got little cards that you can add to each 12, 3, 6 and 9 of the clock, that when those cards are locked in, it will trigger some kind of ability that will often mess you up, or this one needs to be locked in last, that will add extra wrinkles to it. And there's lots of different levels of difficulty that you can add to it. I think I said in my original first impressions at the time, it's one of those solo games that feels like you're playing a kind of classic card game, that you're playing a kind of patient solitaire. I was going to say patience again, just say solitaire, it's easier. That's, even though it is this brand new thing, and it's thematic as well, it's not just an abstract thing you can play with a deck of playing cards. It's got that kind of feeling, that's kind of accessibility, that's kind of instant recognition, even though it is this brand new thing. And I think Assembly works incredibly well. And there's a playthrough of Nations, actually. I should say that for each one. There is a solo playthrough for Nations, and there is one for Assembly that you can watch on the channel as well. I'll link them in the description. I can't put them all in the corner because I can't have many. But Assembly, definitely worth checking out. Number 8 is Orléans, and I think there are 2 playthroughs for Orléans in the channel. Again, very, very early on into it. Orléans Invasion, especially, which there are, I think, promo solo scenarios that you could add into Orléans. And Orléans Invasion came with, as well as a special 2-player mode and a cooperative mode, it came with loads of solo scenarios. And so Orléans is a bag building game where we have these different kinds of workers that, like a deck builder, you will gather them up. They all go in a bag. Every round you draw some out, and they're what you've got available to put on your player board, and certain combinations will activate certain actions, and you will get more buildings along the way that will need different workers to do different special actions. So the solo scenarios, like the co-op mode of Invasion actually, require you to meet certain criteria that are very different, and often, instead of the normal multiplayer Orléans has random event tiles that are going to dictate bonuses that you can get or penalties that you are all going to suffer. There are regimented things that are going to happen. So it's very much it loses stuff in the way of variability, in that it's still different in that you can go in different directions with buildings and the workers you take and stuff, but it's kind of a puzzle to solve rather than this different thing every time. But it's often to try and score well, and it's often a quite difficult puzzle. And it's nice for being very different to the way that you're playing Orléans. You're not really competing. Well, you aren't competing against an AI character. You're competing against the game. You're competing against the challenge that it's set for you. And like a lot of solo games, it's appreciates the extra opportunity to be able to play it whenever and still have a really rewarding experience. Because Orléans is that's. Go back to the top 50. I can't remember the numbers of everything, but that is one of our favorites as well. And I think there's 3 that come with Invasion. They're all very inventive and very fun ways of playing the game. Orléans Invasion, especially. Number 7 is still pretty new to me, but I've been really, really impressed by it. It's Paladins of the West Kingdom. Now, I know that there is the North Sea trilogy, and is the West Kingdom going to be a trilogy as well? I played Raiders of the North Sea multiplayer once, and it was very good. I was very impressed by it, but I remember it having a lot of meanness and not really wanting to go back to it. And I think kind of because of that, one player to a game group all that time ago, I'd kind of looked at the various things. I remember Architects of the West Kingdom had this cool sounding thing where you are going to arrest other players' meeples that are waiting around in there, and they're going to be under your jurisdiction until you let them go for a reward. A cool, innovative sounding thing, but it's not our playstyle. And something I hadn't really considered until I'd seen a few kind of things pop up on social media about Paladins of the West Kingdom was that they've all got solo modes. And I believe, anyway, I've only played Paladins. I believe that they're all quite well respected. And after Paladins, spoiler in advance, well, you know that I like it because it's on a top 10 list. But yeah, like if they're like Paladins, then I definitely want to check them out. So Paladins is a game with a lot of different skill tracks going on that you're kind of trying to recruit these townspeople for bonuses. You're trying to either fight or convert these invading people. There's a lot of moving up these tracks and unlocking rewards as you get your pieces out onto the board. It's a really fantastic Euro game to the point where I've thought that the only real kind of part that we might not like multiplayer is there's a part of the game where whenever you get a robber, you get these suspicion cards that often reward you with money, but when all of the tax money in the middle of the board is gone, whoever's got the most of these suspicion cards gets punished with a debt and then gets to lose some of those suspicion cards. But that is it's a key part of the solo game as well, that you want to kind of maneuver it so that when that happens, you aren't the one left with all of the suspicion cards. You want to try and get rid of them or force the dummy player to take a lot of the purple meeples that are going to make them take those suspicion cards and get them things. That's the only kind of thing that, and I feel like saying that. I want to try it multiplayer because I think that'll work for us. But anyway, the solo game works on all of the player boards have got a solo board on the other side of them. And the solo player has got a deck that's it's the deck is just general for every game, but based on these goals that are on the main board that the king wants you to do, the dummy player is going to start off with bonuses in those actions that's revealed at the some random ones, and then the ones that are revealed as in the first round, the first goal is revealed. The dummy player gets a bonus to doing that for the rest of the game. So whenever he draws that card for that particular action, like build or something, or attack, then he's going to need fewer meeples to do that, and gets more and more meeples as the game goes on, and some of the actions that the AI will do will get them more meeples. But it's a really nice way of kind of targeting them towards this thing, that it's still a random deck of cards what they're doing, but there is some intelligence towards it because they are going to be more likely to do more actions if they take those ones that the king wants them to do, just like you are trying to do as a player as well. As I mentioned, there's that really nice interplay of the suspicion cards that works really well in solo, even though the dummy player isn't necessarily choosing to do some of these things. You get a choice of the workers that you will have for the round. Different coloured workers can be placed in different action spaces to activate them, and so whichever one you don't take is the one that the dummy player is going to be stuck with. So if you see a load of the purple ones are wild as well, so they can go anywhere, so they are really powerful to have, but you can kind of maneuver it so they are forced to take things. And I do like that. I've mentioned in things like the Gallerist, I really like being able to manipulate the dummy player, that they're going to do things to get in the way, and they obviously get to cheat with a lot of the actions and do them a lot easier than a normal player would. But I like that kind of added aspect of being able of recognizing what they're going to do and being able to manipulate them and maybe force them to take the hit of the debts rather than you. But I feel like, is it just the new shine? Because I've only played it a few times, but I've been so kind of blown away by it. I am really, really impressed with Paladins of the West Kingdom. And I know that the North Sea trilogy, that had an expansion, didn't it, where all of them were together. Fans of Shem Phillip games that have seen what I've been missing out on so far. Is that expansion that brings all of the games together? Is that solo as well? And is there going to be one for this trilogy? Yeah, tell me more, because I'm definitely keen after Paladins of the West Kingdom. Number 6 is Role Player, which, again, kind of, it was never a rule, but breaks my kind of thing of I prefer solo games where you aren't just trying to beat your own score, because I think there's probably just as many where I'm trying to beat my own score that I love as ones where we're trying to meet goals or play against an AI. But anyway, Role Player, a game all about kind of rolling a character for, an RPG, like a D&D game. You are rolling the stats for your character, the intelligence and the charisma and the athleticism isn't one of them, but the word that means athleticism that I can't think of right now. So you have this character sheet, and your character has an alignment. They have a backstory that's going to give them different bonuses. The alignment gives them bonuses based on whether you want to be, good or evil, chaotic or orderly. That's not the word either. Think of these words properly. I don't know. I'm not playing D&D though. I'm playing roleplay. So in the solo game, you just set it up like it's a 2-player game, and you do have some kind of agency in this. It's not necessarily just you take a card, then we roll the die, and we get rid of another card. That's not always necessarily going to happen, depending on the cards that you pick. Depending on the dice that you pick. If you pick the leftmost dice, that is the worst die really that's available, because in the normal game it's you pick the worst dice, but you get to choose first in the market. That's the trade-off that you have. So for picking better dice, you're going to get worse choice of the items that are available. So it's trying to emulate that in the solo game as well. So if you pick the first die, then don't worry about it. You're not going to get rid of anything from the market. You're going to get full choice of it. But then if you pick the other dice, then if you choose the other dice, you're going to roll the enemy die, and that's going to get rid of different cards from the market. And so it gives you that kind of similar decision, although you're not thinking about sets that other players are making or anything like that. And you're in role player anyway, you're kind of thinking about that. You're kind of thinking that, that's come out to let that other player complete that set of armor and get a load of points, and how useful are these items going to be to me in the future? If I take this, is this going to be the perfect thing for someone else? There's a bit of that in roleplayer, but a lot of it is, for us anyway, multiplayer solitaire, which we love about it. And so the solo game kind of doesn't suffer for that. It kind of reflects that, and I'm completely fine with it. And it's just another one where I really, really love roleplayer, and love that it's got an engaging solo mode as well. So roleplayer. So number 5 is out here somewhere. It's here. High Rise by Gil Hover. Shout out as well to one of Gil's other games, The Network, which I love dearly and has got a great solo mode too. But High Rise kind of on my mind more because playthrough's coming. It might even be up by now for you, depending on when you watch this. But High Rise, it's a game all about building skyscrapers. We are collecting floors and then turning in different combinations of those floors based on blueprint cards that we have out for each round that want certain combinations to build certain heights of skyscrapers. You are putting them out onto the board, getting bonuses for it, getting points for it, and you want to have the tallest skyscrapers out there. A lot of the actions that you're doing along the way will get you corruption. That is... It's fine, really, depending on how much you have compared to everyone else in the multiplayer game, that is. So the 2-player game I did a playthrough for originally, and the solo game works off the same concept, basically. In the 2-player game, you have a dummy player. In the solo game, you have 2 of these dummy players. And so it's a time track game, so whoever's last in position goes next, and you scream ahead as far as you want, but the more you skip, the less you're going to get to do in a round. But you might want to skip ahead, so you can be sure that those actions are going to be available for you. So you do your turn just as normal, just as you would in the multiplayer game. And then the dummy player, you can either block or move. So block just means they go to the next zone. There are all these zones of actions grouped together. They will go into the zone in front of the leading player, just in the first action space there. No worries, they're just going to block that off. Or you can move with them. There are restrictions. You can't just put them anywhere on the board. You can't just skip them to the end and not worry about them for the rest of the round. You can only skip them so far ahead. But you can put them anywhere, but you take a corruption for it, which is bit by bit. That's not much, but it accumulates. It's kind of it's not necessarily exponential, but you do start. You don't just leap one at a time when you go up in corruption. Those gaps start getting bigger and bigger as you get further down the track. And it's in the solo game especially, you have this control, and if you take that corruption, you get to take that turn. So it's a way of getting all of these extra turns in the game, and it's about weighing up how important is this extra turn. Is it really important that I construct now? Can I just wait and take more actions myself and construct in the next zone instead? You get to see, the AIs have a very regimented set of buildings that they are going to construct at the end of each round, at the very end of each round. So you can see in advance, again, not necessarily manipulating the dummy players. You get to do that when you take actions with them. But yeah, knowing, playing them at their own game, you know which size of buildings are going to be out where. And so you can feed that into your decision of where to build a building, as well as the normal multiplayer decisions you have about the bonuses you would get in that district, and depending on where you're allowed to put them, because you can demolish buildings as well, but you can only demolish the smallest building in a group. So yeah, the solo game is, again, it's a beat your own score game, but with this, the whole game is about trying to work out how often you can manipulate these dummy players, because the corruption, so as mentioned in multiplayer, it depends on how much you have relative to the other players, and you do lose points equal to your corruption value at the very end of the game. You still do that in the solo game, but at the end of each round, the dummy players don't have corruption or anything like that, or any resources. So you do have, in the blueprint card, there is a little number that only applies to the solo game that has a corruption value on it. And every time that someone goes past each construction space on the board, if you choose to construct, then the building you constructed gets covered up, because it's got a bonus on it for the first person that does that. And if the dummy player builds something, doesn't really build something, but takes you randomly take a tile and cover that up as if they'd built something and taken that bonus away. So it does the normal solo game thing of emulating other players and taking those bonuses away as the round goes on. But it's also covering up those numbers, and they are a corruption limit. So if you let the dummy players get there and it's randomly determining that limit, that's up to you. But normally, if you can build a great big skyscraper, why wouldn't you want to go as big as possible and just get the most points and the most bonuses and the most chance of your building staying there the longest if it's the tallest one out there? But at the same time as you're doing that, you are taking away those biggest corruption limits. So it's this balancing act between how much corruption can I afford to take, which buildings can I afford to take, because if I built this smallest one, then there are a lot of reasons why that's not great for me, but it's taking away any chance of my corruption limit being this crazy low value, because at the end of each round, you gain a point for every step you are behind the corruption limit, but you lose 3 points for every step you are over it. And yeah, it's a different feeling, of course, to seeing what the other players are doing and trying to adapt to that. But it's a lovely different challenge, and the playthroughs there have gone way too long. But yeah, I'm really taken with High Rise, as we were when we got the prototype of it. But now I've been playing through the final version of it. Yeah, it's brilliant. High Rise playthrough coming soon though. Check that out. Number 4 is another one kind of along the lines of when I did the first solo video, and I'm kind of reminiscing about a game that I haven't got anymore that I really loved the solo version of. It's Gaia Project, which I think I mentioned in that video. I don't know. I did a playthrough for this when it came out as well. So this is Ultima Factory, who normally do all of the solo modes for Stonemaier games, and this is one that they branched out and did for another company. And so Gaia Project is a kind of spiritual successor for Terra Mystica. Couldn't remember that. But yeah, you are trying to explore space rather than these different terrains. You are terraforming these planets to get them to be the types that you want. It works similarly. There are differences in the different tech trees. There's a bit more to it rather than the temples of Terra Mystica and stuff. But most importantly, the solo mode is, I've seen it in a couple of games since, where we have a small deck of cards to begin with, and you start out with a card out, and then you draw a card from the solo deck when it's the dummy player's turn. And there is an area made in the center of these two cards next to each other that determines the choices that the solo player is going to get. So again, you get this bit of information, like a lot of solo modes, and David Turchi's solo modes, like Teotihuacan did this as well. You've got a bit of information as to what might happen. Your mind can go off in a million different directions with that. But when that final card comes out, you see what they're actually going to do. And then as the game progresses, it adds more cards to it. So you get a sense of, there's going to be this base deck, and that's different every game as well. So you can get a sense that they are really going for particular actions this game. But then as the rounds go on, more cards from different decks get added to it. That's you know what they're kind of going for. But now there are these spanners thrown in the works that you can't quite predict everything, and that's kind of. That's the best way, really. That it keeps you guessing, it keeps you moving forwards. I think it's been a while ago now. This is a game that's pretty much. I think I definitely played it. I played 1.5 solo games. I think it was one that Rach really didn't get on with, but the solo game was beautiful, and it's one of those things where I think kind of like Mage Knight that at the time. It's this great big game. It's a great big expensive game, and I'm only ever going to play it solo. And there's all of these games that we can play 2-player, but it's one that it's one of the only ones that kind of comes back, and I think maybe I want to try that out again. But I've already done the playthrough for it. Whereas Mage Knight, I never did a playthrough for because that was the before times, before the channel times. Maybe we'll go back and. I don't know if I could play through Gaia Project. Do an expansion for Gaia Project, please, so that I can go back to it and do another playthrough for it. But check out Gaia Project if you haven't already. It's brilliant. Number 3 is another one that I've been kind of awakened to in the last couple of months. It's Nusfjord by Uwe Rosenberg, and I was kind of thinking, I know that The Gates of Loyang is one of the ones that's always called on as an amazing solo game, and I think I've definitely played it solo. It didn't grab me at the time. I don't know why, but I know that it is really looked upon well in the solo world. So maybe that's one I need to get back to. Maybe I should put it in the vote. But yes, Nusfjord is one that I maybe played when it came out solo. Definitely played it multiplayer. It's a different playground. I think we might have played it a big 5-player session of it at one point, which is unusual for us. Mainly, I'm 2 players or solo. But played tons of multiplayer and hadn't really thought about the solo thing. And then again, you see these mentions on social media. Paul Grogan did a playthrough for it as well. Kind of got me thinking, why have I skipped this? And it's a game where again you're not really competing against an AI. You are just given a set of circumstances. Really, is where the solo game really comes off. I think. I've criticised, Agricola doesn't really excite me solo, even though it's one of my favourite games. You do still get all of the cards in the solo, but I think with that being a worker placement game that's usually very, very tight, being able to just be free and easy and go wherever you want kind of takes the wind out of it for me, even though you've still got my favourite bit of it, puzzling through these cards and seeing how you're going to get to it. Part of the action in Agricola is, am I going to get to play these cards? What am I going to have to do if this particular sequence is vital to me? What am I going to have to do in terms of player order and sacrificing the optimal spaces to actually get these cards out? Well, in Nusfjord, and I did see a couple of comments saying this is a bad thing, but Nusfjord uses the solo mechanism of a Feast for Odin, which I thought worked beautifully there, where you're just playing solo, but get 2 colours of workers, and you basically alternate between rounds. So in the first round, you'll put out all of your red workers and block off all of these spaces. In round 2, they stay out there, and you have a set of blue workers that you're going to put out. And then in round 3, you bring the red. Why did I use colours? I've forgotten the colours that I used. You bring the red ones back from round 1, and then you place those again. So you are blocking yourself off round to round, and you get the 4-player tile of copy another space to give you a little bit of leeway in there. But the great puzzle of having all of these cards out, the A and B buildings for points and extra resources, and particularly fish, which can be hard to just get straight out early on anyway, because they go to the different shares and they get put in your storage rather than out where you can spend them. And something I didn't really like, and I think I moaned about in the original first impressions, that you didn't get your C cards, your big scoring cards, until the end of the game. Well, towards the end of the game, later on in the game. And so, if you're a player that's really worked towards that already just by chance, and you've got cards that rewarded you for doing it, and then I was just happened to go in this direction and I drew no cards that went towards that, it would be harder for me. Yeah, especially with solo, none of that matters. But yeah, I've definitely, for whatever reason, I don't think that was as much of an issue as I felt it was at the time. It's a really fantastic Rosenberg game, and yeah, even though I saw things that, it's just this thing from Feast for Odin, it worked amazingly in Feast for Odin, especially in Feast for Odin, where it's this massive board of actions that needs some tightening up, especially in solo, where you are just allowed to roam free. Nusfjord is much more a tighter worker placement game because there are much fewer spaces that you can go to, and they're very limited by the number of people that can go there, especially in a 2-player game. And so blocking yourself off and realizing that, okay, we've got so many rounds left, or this is coming up in this round, so if I take that action now, I'm not going to be able to use it in the round that I desperately need to, or if I do it now, that's the last time I'm ever going to get to go there, so maybe I should do all of these things first so I can get a better action of it. Yeah, it just works beautifully. I hit the table, it works so well. Nusfjord, I did a solo playthrough for that as well that you can check out. Number 2 is another Vita Lacerda game. Try to limit myself so I'm not mentioning loads of games from the same designer in one big solo list, because I think a big chunk of the solo top 10 would have been Vita Lacerda games in the first one. So The Gallerist is definitely my favourite still. But coming up in second place is Lisboa, which is way up there in his complexity for games, which can be difficult ones to learn, but incredibly rewarding ones once you have kind of cracked the strange cyclical nature of them. Loads of actions all feed into each other, and so it's this strange cycle. And once you've broken into it, it's so smooth and beautiful and satisfying and thematic. And he picks themes for games that, if I was just running off themes that I was interested in, then I don't really care about car factories. I don't really care about art galleries and things. But actually, when I'm in this game, I'm really interested in it. I want to have the best car factory. It's nice that they are very different themes as well for trying something new. But Lisboa is taking on this history in Portugal, something I had no idea about. This kind of crazy series of disasters of great big fires and flooding and destruction of Lisboa, and then the people that had to step up and rebuild it. And that's what we're trying to do in the game. We're trying to rebuild these different sections of Lisboa and try and please the king, basically, the most. So in the solo game, what I loved about The Gallerist, and you can see the different ways that I've talked about that game for more about that, is that it's the simplest solo mode. Lacerda moves to a different space, leaves someone behind, and if he gets kicked out, he'll take some tickets away, which is the timer for the game, and just has a few rules. If he goes to a certain section for bonuses, he takes certain ones away that you can plan for. So using that, you can. It's really good for manipulation of an AI opponent, because you can go in spaces where he's about to go and will give you extra kicked out actions and things. It's definitely more complex in Lisboa because the game itself is. I know that I haven't played it for at least a year. I would definitely need a big retraining session to get back into it, but I'd really like to. But yeah, the solo Lacerda in Lisboa is moving across the main actions of the game, so you can see what he's going to do. You can have this idea again, this inkling of what he's going to do, but what you do influences him a lot. And although he is playing off a kind of simple set of rules, it's just one double-sided sheet, I believe, the solo rules for the game. He is playing off a simple set of decisions. It's surprising how much he can kind of do what you wanted to do just before you wanted to do it and just get in your way. And yeah, for that bit of information, it just gets you kind of like it would be in a multiplayer game. It gets you thinking about, trying to think moves ahead, even though really, it's kind of regimented some of the stuff that he's going to do. But yeah, I think that while Gallerist is still definitely my favourite, is the one I most enjoy playing, I think Lisboa is one for. Surely it was meant to be like this, but whether it was intended or not, it really feels like you're playing against someone, even though they are playing by a relatively simple set of rules. But there is, yeah, my playthrough for Lisboa is solo. I think everything Vital Lacerda I've done is solo. Apart from, well, actually, I did a Kanban one based off a BGG user's custom solo variant because it didn't have one when it came out. It was before they were all the fancy ones that are just off camera, actually. Their cube isn't on camera. But yeah, Kanban EV will come out, is it towards the end of this year? Well, who knows with all the stuff that's happened this year. But whenever that comes out, I really, really want to cover that because Kanban, for multiplayer for sure, I think that would be my favourite Vital game, and can't wait to see what his solo version of it is. But anyway, Lisboa, absolutely fantastic solo game. Check it out. And finally, number one, which I think I also gave an honourable mention to in the first solo video. I think I forgot to mention it at all, in fact. And since then, kind of got a load of stuff for it and got very much back into it. It's Hostage Negotiator from Van Ryder Games, which is a solo-only game, a fast solo-only game as well. It's like a 10-15 minute game where you play as a hostage negotiator. There are these different abductors with their different stories, and some of them are, yeah, pretty heavy stories, pretty heart-wrenching stories, but you are the hostage negotiator. They've taken hostages. You have all of these conversation cards that you can get really into the theme of the game, that you have all of these text boxes of the things that you are saying to the abductor, and you are trying to get all of the hostages out safely and arrest the suspects for the best win, for the most ideal win. And for such a short game, and it's not a deck building game, it's a hand building game. You start off with these 6 zero-cost cards, and when you play a card, you can't have it for the next round, basically. It goes in a pile, and then when you start the next round, they go into the market, which you can buy for free at the end again. But you will earn conversation points where you can add cards to your hand that will have more powerful effects. Obviously, the higher the cost, the more powerful the effect. So for such a kind of short game, I think it really has a fantastic kind of impact, a fantastic thematic feeling for it. Yeah, some of these stories, as I mentioned, are kind of maybe a little bit too heavy. That it's someone that's is taking hostages because they need medical expenses paid and things. Some of them are kind of based on the brothers from Die Hard, and are more that kind of that kind of tropey thing rather than these more real ones. But there are a ton of extra things that you can get for Hostage Negotiator now. So I got it when it first came out in English shops. I saw the Rado run through for it originally. And since then, it's had loads of foil packs of abductors that give you these completely different experiences that are designed by different people as well. One of them that I haven't played yet is designed by Automa Factory as well. So I really, really need to get to that one. I've been leaving it up to random choice which one I play against. But yeah, it's got 10 of those abductor packs now. I think the base game's got 3 abductors indefinitely, maybe 4. And then there is Hostage Negotiator Crime Wave, that is a base game or a standalone expansion. That's the term I'm searching for. You play on its own, or you can mix all of it together and basically make your own custom conversation decks or tarot card decks, or you just play with one of the sets from one of the games and have all of these different abductors. I backed Kickstarters for it, the Crime Wave Kickstarter, I think. And you get all of these little meeples that are, of course, not essential to the game, but all of these abductor meeples and things that are an excellent little touch. So I'm getting away with saying all of this extra stuff for it. So it's easy to kind of get frustrated early on, as I definitely did, and it kind of faded into the background to me for a while, of the game being this very luck-driven thing, and it's a game involving dice. You play a conversation card, you roll some dice, And based on how annoyed the abductor is, the more annoyed they are, the less you're going to get to roll. Based on the result of that dice, you look at the result of the card, and the better you roll, the better the result. Some of the bad results will end the conversation, end the round, and then you draw terror cards that are going to make things worse. If you run out of terror cards, or they start killing hostages, then you are going to lose the game. So it's easy to see the game as this luck fest that, play a card, roll the dice, it didn't work out, I lose, let's just set it up again, which it is it's a very Moorish game, with especially if you aren't changing the abductor, you can be set up again in seconds to start playing a game. And it's that's how it seems at the beginning, but definitely through looking through experience with the game more, and I don't think I'm very experienced with the game still, even though in the last few weeks I've played it a lot. But through looking at posts, it's like Shadowrun Crossfire, for example, is very easy to see as this just frustrating, random, difficult deck building game. But it's not played like more on that if a Shadowrun Crossfire video gets voted on. But it's not your average deck builder. You don't think of it in the same way as a deck builder. You're buying cards that you need right now, rather than cards that you're thinking, that would complement my deck in this particular way. In a similar way, Hostage Negotiator isn't just buy this card because that'll be really useful. If the dice come off in this, then that's going to be great. It's more about planning these things out, buying cards that you need right now, but then not necessarily buying them because you have them, because as soon as you've played them, they go back into the market, and you're going to have to buy them again. You're going to have to work up the points. It's not like they're staying in like a deck builder. It's often about having rounds where you do absolutely nothing so you can get cards back, because there's a lot of, you'll roll a face on the dice. I think it's if you roll a 4, you can discard 2 cards to treat that as a success. So if you get a really good card, it's a great big waste just playing it when that's the only thing in your hand, because you've got nothing to kind of mitigate this stuff. There are cards that you can buy where it's like re-roll a dice or get to roll extra dice. So it's about, if you are really staking a lot on this particular powerful card coming up, there are a lot of things that you can do to prepare yourself for it. Whereas, ultimately, it is going to come down to rolls of dice, but there is a lot you can do yourself to prepare for this and to think it through, rather than it just being this luck fest. It can play like that and can just be, quite shallow and frustrating if you just play it like that. But there is definitely kind of that's. The closest thing I can think is that you need to think about things differently, as I did to try and get through Shadowrun Crossfire, which I never became good at, and I still wouldn't say that my success rate at Hostage Negotiator is anything to shout about at all. But it's very good for making you realise that, I've been thinking about this wrong. So just kind of talking about the extra stuff in it, that there is so much stuff for it now. I think I've got all of the stuff, because the latest expansion, I missed this, I think, on Kickstarter, or I just didn't have the funds at the time, and I bought a pledge after the fact of Hostage Negotiator Korea, which will be in next month's vote. Well, I say next month, it's going to be like in a day or something. It's Hostage Negotiator Korea. You need a decent number of expansions for it to be able to play this expansion. You need a decent number of those abductor packs. But I haven't played any of the Korea yet. I really wanted to try and get back in the mindset to try and get decently good at the game before I try and play through the Korea. But this adds all kind of, as well as the main chunk of gameplay is playing through some Hostage Negotiator and having linked scenarios that will tell a story over it. There is a whole personal aspect. There's a whole personal life aspect to it, because you're playing the career, you're playing the life of this Hostage Negotiator through all of these years. And as I've mentioned in lots of legacy videos, it's not legacy. I think everything is resettable in career, as far as I know. But there are tons of tasty envelopes to open and secret little boxes. It's just a small box expansion, the same size box as the original Hostage Negotiator, this little game. But yeah, it's full of twists and turns and surprises along the way, and I'm really, really excited to play that. Hostage Negotiator is going to be in the vote, and I was kind of torn between is that going to be, let's just do some Hostage Negotiator? Should I play through some of the career? How much can I get through? How much do I want to spoil? We'll see though. Let me know though if you want to see some Hostage Negotiator, because I think it's an absolutely fantastic. It's a solo only game. Well, we have played it a few times. I do enjoy sometimes just. We're ultimately only playing it as one player, but we're making the decisions together. Anyway, Hostage Negotiator. Check it out if you haven't already. Hopefully, you're watching this at a time when I've done a playthrough for it, because it's absolutely phenomenal. There we go. That's 10 more solo games. I think that we could keep going forever with these top 10 solo games. Should we do part 3? Yeah, they are ones that I really enjoy. Which ones haven't I mentioned that are so obvious to you that you can't believe that I haven't talked about them yet? Let me know. Maybe I haven't got to them yet. Maybe my head's been in the sand like it was with things like Paladins. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope that it gave you maybe piqued your interest about some games that you might have overlooked. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you for some more top 10s in the future. Bye.